Welcome to the Becoming Superhuman podcast. I'm your host, Trevor Schmidt. I was trained in Western medicine as a physician assistant, where I was exposed to the dark side of medicine. Through self-education and biohacking, I figured out ways to hack my system, becoming a better version of myself. We'll explore the wisdom and insight of my findings with each episode of the Becoming Superhuman podcast. Welcome to the show today. We're talking about becoming superhuman, and on this episode, I'm going to talk about something that's dear to my heart. I'll tell you, this is my story of my 8 years that I've spent biohacking, and as it turns out, this is not just a story of biohacking, but as it turns out, this is a story of self-realization and enlightenment and awakening to my full potential. And I've been exploring this for 8 years, and in doing so, I'm gonna kind of take you along this path and show you where I've gone to, where I've explored, and it's essentially I've been testing on myself. So, where did this all begin? About 8 years ago, if you may remember from the movie The Matrix. In the scene, they talk about the red pill, the blue pill, and it's a choice. And that's essentially what the awakening process is you have to make a choice. You have to choose to awaken your senses, awaken your consciousness, and become aware of all the things that we are unconsciously doing on a daily basis. And so I chose, although I had already been doing things, right? I'd already been working out, I'd already been trying to eat right, I'd already been trying to do some things to improve myself and quote unquote biohack. But it really all comes down to that one moment. And that one moment in time is what spawns and pushes you in a whole different trajectory, a different path in your life. And many people will continue down that path, and then some people will fall off. And what I'm here to show you is the path that I followed. And this is 8 years past now, so I'm able to look back in retrospect and give you insight in what I did and tell you what was good and what was bad and help guide you along this path to hopefully you make your own decisions, because the truth is nobody can tell you what your awakening means. You have to figure it out yourself. So I'm here not as your guru, I'm here as your guide to shine light on the darkness of this society and the things that were taught to us and programmed to us that are holding us in this illusion, or as the Mayan culture they call it the Maya, which is the illusion that we live in. So once I made that decision, that moment in time when I decided that this is it, I'm going to start seeking the truth. As it turns out, I look back and there's a word for this in the Eastern philosophy and the yogic philosophy, the yogic teachings. They say this is the moment when you become the seeker, and so you start to seek the knowledge, seek the wisdom and the answers that you're looking for. In the Bible, they say, ask and you shall receive. So when you start to figure out what it is that you want from this universe, you will start asking better questions. And as you ask better questions, the information will be provided to you. See, all the information is free in this world. But even for me just telling you this stuff, this is just an example of what's possible for you. So by me saying this to you is just knowing it is one thing, hearing it is one thing, but actually understanding it and living as if it's real within your life is a completely different path. You may have heard a lot of these things already, but it's about implementing these philosophies into your life and acting as if they're real. Otherwise, they are not real to you. All right, so we got to become a seeker. So when I started seeking, I started looking around, and I just, it's interesting how the law of attraction works. And when you start getting on this path where you are starting to identify what you want out of this world and from your life, when you start looking for some things, specifically the law of attraction, when you start looking for it, you will start seeing more of that which you desire. And an example of this might be when you go buy a brand new car and you think, let's just use a Jeep for example. You think that the Jeep is the hottest car, the most amazing, it's unique, nobody else has it, and especially in the perfect blue color that you want. You drive off the lot and you're like, I'm unique and nobody else has this. I feel so special. And that specialness lasts about until you get to the first light. And then when you look to right and left, you see 3 other Jeeps that are parked there that are the same color or similar in nature. And the question is did those just all of a sudden appear? Or were they always there to begin with? And the truth is that it's all there to begin with. It's always there. It always has been there. It's just that you were not focused on that specifically. And then when you become focused on it and you start looking for specifically Jeeps of that color, they'll start popping up all over the place. And so this is an example how you get what you see, you get what you believe. And when you believe that this is a special thing and you start looking for it in your life, you'll start to appreciate it, you'll start to see it. So if you want to see more bad things in your life, then you think about bad things all day long. And you think about how you don't want the bad things. Your brain doesn't really work in this binary sense where good and bad. So you have to focus only on the things that you want, because if you focus on the things that you don't want, your brain will start bringing you that as well. So again, it's the law of attraction. You focus on the things that you want to attract to you. And if you're thinking about the things that you don't want, you will also attract that as well. So in my seeking, I came across Tai Lopez. So Tai Lopez had this course that he sold. It was called, I think, the 67 Steps. And it was like $59, right? $59. And at the time, I'm like, someone recommended it, and I'm just going to try it out. I'm going to go through the course, go through his videos. And what happened was Tai was able to connect with me on the level where I was at that moment. And he showed me that I don't know what I don't know. And there were a lot of things that he was saying that I wasn't aware of. And I wasn't conscious of that way that I was capable of living. And so it made me realize that I had more potential than I believed I had. And many of the things that I believed I couldn't do were not real. In fact, it was a perceived fear or anxiety or limitation that I placed on myself. And so I realized that I could excel and improve in any aspect of my life that I chose. All I had to do was start moving in that direction. And it didn't matter what it was, whether it was my spiritual life, whether it was my love life, whether it was my relationship with my kids, whether it was my ability to communicate with coworkers, whether it was my ability to become a public speaker, public figure, a business owner, entrepreneur, whatever it was that I chose, all of the knowledge and wisdom is out there. And so this made me, again, I'm going to tap back into the Matrix, and the movie of The Matrix, and the scene when Neo decides that he is going to get out of the Matrix, the illusion, when he decides that he wants to get out and he wants to know the truth, they pull him out of the Matrix, and then he starts to unprogram his mind from all the lies that he was told, and then reprogram. And that reprogramming, if you remember, is essentially like they hooked him up with a cable, we'll call it like a USB cable, right, there with our phone. He hooked up to the cable, and he essentially downloaded the information. So, to me, that was synonymous with reading books. Or in my case, I like listening to books, audio books. But you can consume the content or download the information to your brain any way that you want. Sometimes you can do it faster than others. And with listening to books, you can do it 2 times the speed. Even in videos, you can speed it up. If your brain can tolerate the speed, you can consume the content extremely fast. You can watch videos on YouTube. I like courses. I like going to conferences. Hands-on type experiences. Whatever way that you thrive in learning, then you do that. And so there's no right way. There's how do you consume the content way. Your way is different than my way. There's clearly a lot of different options out there for you, and you'll find what makes most sense to you. But the key is seeking, right? And what you'll hear, you'll see a path. I'm going to kind of light up the path for you, and so you'll see how I went through this process and the things that I did, and you're going to figure out something that makes sense to you. And the words that I'm saying, at some point they may resonate with you, because you might not be as far as me on the path, but you'll be somewhere on this path. And as you see somewhere on this path, you can see how I progress, and it'll give you an idea of maybe how you could possibly progress. Or perhaps, where's the next step for you? And that's what this is made for. So, Ty Lopez, again, he gave me a lot of insight and got me started on this path that put me down, started sending me down different rabbit holes. And for one, the big thing is that he got me on is listening books. He put me on this path of reading like a voracious reader. Like I read unbelievable amount. And I have a timer each day, a goal for me to listen to at minimum an hour a day. And I typically go far beyond that. And where does this hour come? And you're like, whoa, you're a busy guy. How could you ever be doing that much? And well, what it comes down to is filling the gap time that you have in your life, the downtime. So every time I get in the car, I start listening. In fact, as soon as I leave wherever I'm leaving, so I'm start walking out to my car, my earbuds are in my ear, and I'm starting to listen to something that's productive in educating myself. And so I'm improving. I set that on autopilot, so I already know what I'm doing, always. And the interesting thing that I found is that when you fill your gap time with productive activity and you start inputting the positive during that time period, most people allow that monkey brain to talk, that chatter, that self-deprivation, that you're not good enough, and you have this imposter syndrome that you don't believe that you fit the role that you're trying to claim you are, right? So this is the ability to create the situation that educates you and fills your brain with the information that will allow you to feel comfortable and confident in the situations that you want to be in. So, fill the gap time, right? And then if you fill the gap time with positive thoughts, like listening to a podcast like this, you effectively push out the negative thoughts and ideas, and they just don't happen anymore, or a lot fewer. They say many people have these crazy negative thoughts all throughout, like thousands and thousands of times, repetition over and over and over throughout their brain. So no surprise that they don't accomplish much, because they're so worried and focused on the negative things that's what they're attracting into their life. Because they're focused on it, they see more of the negative things in their life. While at the exact same moment, there are always the positive things. They're always there, just like the car that we talked about that you see just because you become aware of it. There's always the positive things in your life. You just need to be focused on them and become more aware of them. And then when you do that, you will draw that energy into your experience, and you will experience a more joyful, happy experience in life. So, moving on here. I know I'm going down these rabbit holes, and I'm giving you more information, and I don't want to overwhelm you. And much of these topics, I will continue to dive deeper and deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole as we get further along in this podcast. But I need to not go too far over your head and pull you up with me as you're educating yourself in the awakening process. So the next person who helped me along my process, one of my guides, was Tony Robbins. And I started out reading Tony Robbins' books. And Tony Robbins has been a motivational speaker and a guide for decades now. He's probably one of the most popular in the self-help space at this point. And so I found him reading his books, and at that time in my life, I was kind of struggling with my business, trying to figure things out. And so I opted to go to his Business Mastery conference, which was a big deal for me at the time. It was $10,000 just to go to the conference, so it was a big deal for me. So I was committed to this. And once I committed to myself financially, I invested in myself. It allowed me to then put forth the focused effort in order to grow and expand in a new way. And when I was exposed to this Business Mastery, it enlightened me to the business practices of successful entrepreneurs. And consequently, it allowed me to thrive on a whole new level in financial abundance and life abundance. And so Tony Robbins helped take me down this path and open my eyes to what was possible for me. In addition, he's got all these different conferences, and as you'll learn with me, it's not all about making money, it's not all about one thing, it's about all things within our lives. We need to expand ourselves completely in all directions, in all aspects of our lives to achieve our full potential. When you neglect one aspect of your life, it's like having a chair that lost one leg. You end up falling over. You got to have the stability and foundation of every aspect of your life in order to maintain the success. You see some of these wealthy individuals that they effectively trade their health for their wealth. They work hard, 90, 80, 100-hour weeks, and they trade their health in order to get wealthy, only to find out in their mid-40s and early 50s that they're wealthy now beyond their imagination, except at this point they have no health. They've lost their health. And they're not only that, they're declining. And at that point in time, most of those wealthy individuals would be more than happy to trade that wealth if they only had their health. So what I'm here to imprint on you is that it's more important and it's a lot easier to maintain your health to begin with than to try to regain it once you've lost it. Now, some of you have already gone past that point where you're starting to get unhealthy and you're starting to experience chronic disease and issues that are causing you problems in your life, and now you're looking for ways to solve that problem. And so this will absolutely help you to restore, regenerate, and start aging backwards. That's what we're talking about here. That's the purpose. Right? I intend to live longer, to hack my body, hack my mind, and become my best version, and that's what we're talking about here. So Tony Robbins helped point me in these different directions, and he, more importantly, he put my mindset at a level that put me in the state of being when I was able to function at a higher level. And it cleared out the clouds, the fog, the mental limitations that I had, and allowed me to see more clearly as to what I actually wanted. In archery, when you're trying to shoot, but you don't even see where the target is. If there's no target, then you're just shooting randomly or haphazardly. Or another analogy would be when you leave your house, if you have no directions, then you're going nowhere, right? And you'll get there real fast, as many of you find out. You get nowhere real fast. So when you have a target, when you have a goal that you want to achieve, you will achieve it. You just have to start moving in that direction. And it may not be as fast as you want, it may not happen exactly how you anticipated it, but you will get there eventually if you persist. So Tony Robbins taught me that I'm unlimited, right? And I realized that the limitations that I had were simply false and self-imposed. And at one of his conferences, we were allowed to walk across hot coals, fire. And what I realized from this experience was that I can walk through the fire of hell and not get burned. And at the moment, at the time when I did this, it was empowering, of course. It made me a believer at the time. But in retrospect now, years past, I look back and I realized that this was all just an analogy for my life. And that when I walked across those coals, those hot flames of fire that what I perceived would burn me and hurt me, that's the analogy of our lives. How when we pass through these times in our lives and when we expect, things are going to be terrible. Oh my God, I lost my job. Things are going to be so bad. Or, my business isn't working out the way that I anticipated as fast as I thought it was going to be. Or, whatever it is that your perceived fire of life, the challenges that you experience in life, whatever that perception is, most of your struggle is just that. It's a perception of the situation. You expect it to be uncomfortable, and therefore you start to produce those feelings and chemicals, coincidentally, within your body, which allow you to experience that which you expected. However, if you change your state of being and expect something different, lo and behold, your body creates the chemicals and you will experience that which you expect. And again, this is parallel with the law of attraction. When you start acting as if that which you desire is real, your body and mind will start to create the experience that is congruent with that thought. Tony Robbins. So if you haven't checked out Tony Robbins, definitely check him out. So another thing on my path of this biohacking is clearly, many of you are aware of these different ways that you can change your lifestyle habits and your eating habits and your exercise and all that stuff to hack the body. So I'm just going to kind of tap into some of the things that I've done And again, this is just like a list of things that I've done in the past, and I'll give you a little bit on each of them. But the more details and for each one of these biohacks and ways for you to utilize it in your life, that's what I'm going to be discussing in the further podcasts in the future. So the lifestyle changes, that I experienced with great benefit was, for one, the first thing that I started doing was drinking more water. And I had the realization that I was chronically dehydrated. And so I'm sure, this is all over the media now. Everybody's talking about this. When I started, this was years ago, nobody was talking about it. So it was something that I got started doing, and it was a big deal for me. It was a huge deal because I was definitely chronically dehydrated, which caused a lot of my health issues at the time. I also realized that a lot of the toxins that we were exposed to were causing me to be toxic, whether it was in my gut, my bowels, my kidneys, my liver, and I was experiencing health issues because of these toxins. And so it led me down this path to start detoxifying my body. And it first started with the water, and water helps too, is like the river of life. It cleanses through our body and carries out all the toxic material. Now, colon cleanse is just one part of our system that we have. Our bowels, when we eat the food goes through our system, and now say the food has some type of chemicals in it, some pesticides, some GMOs, whatever the toxin is that we're exposed to through the food, it goes through our colon. Our bowels, they suck out all the nutrients and the water that is good for the body, that sucks it all out of there, and it leaves all the bad stuff in the bowels and the intestines, which goes through the intestines and then gets concentrated in the bowels, where all the good stuff is extracted, and we're left with the feces. So all the junk goes out, right? Well, sometimes that works effective for some people, and other times it's like the stuff gets caked to the walls of the colon, and you may actually be carrying up to 20 pounds of crap, we'll call it, right? And it's like the feces, the poop, the toxic material that just gets stuck to the walls of the colon, and it is there, and as it's there, it gets reabsorbed. Or it causes other problems like, back pain, you're gaining weight because of this. And like I said, up to 20 pounds of toxic crap that's still in your bowels. So I did a colon cleanse. Colon cleanse is when they stick something up your pooper, they spray water effectively, and the water just cleanses out, and the stuff comes out naturally. It's a gentle process. I know it may sound whatever, however you might think based off of your belief process with having something up your rectum. But once you get over the belief and the fear, anxiety, whatever it is, that your thoughts about this, it's a great thing for you, and it helps to cleanse the system and detoxify your body from the colon. Now, that's only one part of our system. Our whole entire system, you see, the humans in general are a toxic system. So we are exposed to all these different toxins through these different aspects of our environment, but our body was specifically built and designed to detoxify and allow us to function at this level that we're here. So you got to learn how the detoxification system works. Water's the main thing, right? Then we got the colon. We have our kidneys and our liver. These are meant to detoxify the blood, detoxify the whole entire organism. If our organs are working properly, it takes out the toxins and we're able to function adequately. Now, the problem is many of us have been exposed to so many toxins that our organs have gotten overwhelmed. And we'll go back to the analogy of like you have sludge that your organs are detoxifying, and especially if you're dehydrated, that sludge gets thicker, and as it gets thicker, it clogs up the filter, right? So the kidneys or the liver, it clogs up the filter. So then the filter doesn't work appropriately, and then the toxins back up into the body, and the body becomes toxic. Then you experience illnesses, sicknesses, chronic diseases. This is the only reason why you experience those things, is these toxics are building up in you. So if you can eliminate the toxins, avoid the new toxic exposures, our body works the way it should be, the way it was designed, the way that our DNA is the map for. The DNA is just the map. It tells us what's possible. DNA, in addition to the environmental changes, will dictate what you manifest in your life. So juicing. Juicing will detoxify the organs and cleanse out your system. This is like the early stages where you want to cleanse out the organs, because you don't want to get into more potent detoxification when your organs aren't working properly. So you got to cleanse out the organs first. Now, once I got past cleansing out my organs, I was like, okay, let's detoxify. And so I did a lot of studying on that. There's different detoxification processes and purification processes, whether that's fasting, and you do water fasting. There's lots of different aspects of fasting. There's another podcast that I go into a little bit deeper dive into fasting and how you can implement the benefits of fasting into your life. There's also metal detoxing. Coincidentally, I found out that we are all exposed to heavy metals, and as it turns out, if you eat fish, particularly the large fish that have lived for extended periods of time, like tuna, for example. I was a huge sushi fan. I love sushi, right? And at the time, I believed that I was eating healthy because it was fish, right? It was good for you. Well, as it turns out, the larger fish are exposed to heavy metals in the ocean, and as they live longer, they continue to consume and eat the smaller fish, and unfortunately, our body, as well as the fish's body, is unable to detoxify or cleanse out the heavy metals. So we continue to build up. And at some point, when you build up a high enough level of toxic metals within your system, you will start to appreciate illness and disease. So when you eat the large fish, like the tuna, regularly through sushi, it's easy to build up a toxic overload of heavy metals in the system. So you have to do a specific cleanse to chelate or bind up the metals and extract them out through the system. So there's different toxic detoxes to do for that specifically. Similarly, there's specific detoxes to do for parasites. You know, parasites is kind of a new detoxification that for me at least, and I believe here in the United States. However, it's not new in general. They've been doing it all over the world, and they've been doing this in religious rituals and ceremonies for hundreds and thousands of years. So all these detoxing systems and philosophies have been integrated through human nature, through these religious systems all throughout time. So when you start doing your research into religion, you'll start to find that the detoxification system was baked into the mindset and the beliefs of the religions. And now, so people believe that they were doing it for a religious purpose, when the truth is that they utilize a religion to motivate individuals to do the things to cleanse out their body. And once you start getting the toxins out of your system, now it's about avoiding the toxins from coming into the system in the first place. So biohacking 101, right? If we get the toxins out of our system, we need to start avoiding the toxins from filling those storage of toxins in our system. So once we get them out, we want to keep them out, and then our system will work better, and then we can continue to detoxify on a regular basis. So the toxins that you want to be concerned about in the air. So being indoors is 100 times more toxic than being outdoors, because the air is concentrated, and so all those toxins become concentrated on an indoor basis. So many of you, like myself, we stay indoors too often. You got to get outside or create an airflow through the indoor place where you're at, where you have fresh air flowing in. Another thing that you can do with indoor air is there's specific filters that you can get. Not only the air conditioning filters that we all have in the walls, but you can also get additional filters to additionally filter out the air as best you can. Because you got to realize that if you don't have a filter, then your lungs are doing it for you. But either way, you have to filter out the crap. So now that you know that they're there, you have to start taking action to protect yourself against those toxins, and that's has to do with filters. But it's also a matter of avoidance as well. So when you know that there might be an exposure, for example, we all go to get gas, and so when you go to get gas, you're exposed to benzene, and benzene is a toxin that will build up within your system. And you do this every time for every week or so that you're getting gas, and you continue to build up, and you become toxic. So do your best to avoid the toxic exposure. So don't stand right next to where the gas is coming out. Simple stuff, right? Simple stuff, avoidance. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is the water, the toxins within the water. And we're all probably aware of many of the toxins in the drinking water, the tap water, right? So many of us already know you avoid the tap water, but you may not think about bathing in the water. So when you take a shower, the same chemicals that you were exposed to that you wanted to avoid by drinking the tap water, it gets aerosolized. Tiny particles go into the air, and that might be through the steam or the water hits off your body, it gets into small particles, and you'll inhale it then. Also, our body, our skin absorbs chemicals as well, so anything that is exposed to your skin through the water will be absorbed into your body. So you got to protect yourself from the water. Right? So that means that there are a couple ways you can do this. The simple, easy, cheap way to do this is you can get a specific filter for each of the shower heads. So each of your showers, you can have a specific filter. These can be bought on Amazon for usually $20-30. You can also do a whole house filter where you filter the water as it's coming into the house to begin with. So that is the best by far, because then it addresses all of the water that's coming into your house. The other thing that you may have heard of would be like a hard water filter. Hard water is cutting out the heavy metals in our water, and those would be, if you have heavy metals or hard water, you would see that as residue that shows up as the water drips out, and that'll accumulate at the base of your faucets. So if you have hard water, you're going to look into getting a hard water filter. But also filtering out the water, the home filter is the best. Now, the drinking water, there's filters for drinking water. There's lots of different options that are going to depend on how much you're willing to invest in yourself and longevity and how long you want to have these things last. And so obviously if you have you're renting a house, it's going to be a different decision than if you own the house. So you'll make your choices, but just becoming conscious and aware that these different exposures. So it's similarly to being able to get an individual filter for the faucet that comes out of your shower. You can also get an individual filter for the faucet that you wash your hands and your face with. So that's another way. It's a cheap, easy way. It's $30 or so. You can find it on Amazon. We're also exposed to different chemicals. The chemicals would be like lotions, soaps, shampoos, deodorants, any of the facial products that you might be using, the hair products, the cleaning products. Maybe even at your work, there's different chemicals that you're exposed to. I know we have a medical clinic, and there's different chemicals that we utilize to quote-unquote sterilize the equipment and the rooms and the surfaces and things of that nature, and that's all toxic. So it's just becoming conscious and aware of those things to avoid or replace with non-toxic type materials. Food is clearly, I think, the most popular that people are aware of the toxic levels that we're exposed to now in the food. And we're exposed through food, through the GMOs or the genetically modified organisms. And these were, the companies, they were creating solutions for the food supply. We realized that we had a limited food supply, and because of various environmental reasons, we had a lack of food supply. So we spent a lot of money to try and figure out a way that we could limit or reduce the loss while maximizing the output of our food production efforts. And that's where GMOs were developed. So they were developed to help improve and increase the food supply, which is a good intention initially, but the problem was that even after they realized that it wasn't good for us, they continued to push down the same path. And so now you and I have to recognize that path was a losing test. They were testing on us, and so it was a failure. But they're still allowing it to happen, so you have to be conscious and aware and protect yourself, because they're not going to protect you. Similarly, the use of pesticides by the company Monsanto's, where they produce pesticides which, it allowed for higher yield of crops because there was less death of the crops themselves from, say, pests like grasshoppers or beetles or whatever the case, that were destroying entire crops, costing billions of dollars and leading to food shortages. So the solution was these chemicals. They spray chemicals on there which killed the bugs, but consequently it caused cancer. And so you have to become conscious of these things, and so you can protect yourself. And again, the rabbit hole goes deep, so there's full books written on each of these subjects. So I'm just shining my light and telling you there's a problem here, and you got to start doing some research. Become a seeker of the knowledge. Also, we found, antibiotics, where they're utilizing antibiotics in our food supply, food chain with all the animals, and that was to help the animals, survive long enough to provide our food, right? And so we wanted to avoid infections and other problems, so they preemptively give antibiotics for the animals, but then, as it turns out, those antibiotics got passed on the food chain, and then we consumed them. So then, once we start consuming the antibiotics don't work as well on us. So then when we need the antibiotics, we're not able to, it doesn't work well for us. And so that causes a lot of problems in the human body. It also causes many other hormonal issues that affect us and cause chronic disease. There's also narcotics and medications that were diffused through the food supply, again, through these hormones and these antibiotics, and these food supply that they feed the animals is the toxic material that then gets diffused through the animal, and then when we eat it, we are eating those toxins. Another thing that isn't really talked about much lately in our news cycles would be the EMF, or the electromagnetic fields that are being produced. Now, this is certainly nothing new. This is this idea of the effects of electricity has been around since we harnessed electricity in the first place. Right from the beginning, it was controversial, and there's lots of books on this so you can see. But nowadays, we're utilizing all kinds of electromagnetic fields that visually humans can't see them. So just because they're not there, many people believe that they aren't there. But that's the big lie, that's the big illusion. They are there, we just can't perceive them. So for example, we all knew that there was bad radiation coming off the microwave. We've been told that since the beginning, right? It's radiation, so you stay away from that. So that concept, if you have the imagination that the field of energy is emitted from this thing, and it's a radius, it goes to a specific radius, so you get further away from this stuff, then it's not going to necessarily affect you, or has less of an effect. This is the idea, right? So you can avoid the exposure. But again, it's just becoming more conscious of it. Where are we getting exposed to these electronic fields? They are anywhere where the electricity is. Right now, I'm just absorbing all of the energy from these lights that are pounding, the energy that's pounding down on me. Any of your Bluetooth devices, your phones, your computers, anything that emits an electronic field or an EMF will potentially affect you at a cellular level, which then has a cascade effect of negative issues. Now, once we get past some of these toxic stuff, you start to want to rebuild, right? You're like, okay, I cut out all these bad things out of my life, and how do I rebuild? And so that's where I stumbled across supplements. And what I found is that initially my mindset or belief structure was that the supplements were like a waste of time. I was taking these things and they weren't doing anything for me. So because of that, I just didn't even take anything. I didn't even take vitamins at the time. I was like, that stuff's a waste of money, and I was broke and cheap at the time. So I was like, I'm not even gonna do that. So what I had to do was I had to change my mindset, and I had to change my belief structure. And so when I heard other individuals whom I trusted and believed telling me that they believed that these supplements worked, I trusted them. And then I utilized that trust, and I acted as if that's real, and I just took all the supplements anyways. And I just believed. I suspended my judgment, and I just believed. I had faith that these supplements were going to work. And I gave it enough of a shot. And so when I say enough of a shot, what I normally would do is I would say 3 months. I would give it a 3-month trial, try it out, see how you like it, and if you don't notice any difference, get rid of it. Now, when you get rid of it, you still have to pay attention, because many times what happens is the effect occurs in a slow fashion, and you don't actually realize the effect that it had until you stop doing it. And then it's the absence of that effect that you recognize. So that's why you have to give yourself enough time, and then when you stop, you got to still pay attention. So that's supplements, and again, supplements is a long, deep rabbit hole. There's many different supplements that you can do, and different ways that you can utilize those tools And that's really how you should utilize it. It's a tool in your tool belt. And so all these different biohacking techniques it's not one or the other, it's all. And they all have their different purposes. So you'll figure out what purpose you need and you utilize it as a tool. Habits for me was the game changer, in that all of us have been programmed from a young age. We've been programmed to know how our society works, how our educational system, how the work system, how the government. We've been programmed to understand how this stuff works, so then we can then work within this illusion that was created for us. And so many of our habits that we created when we were younger aren't serving us at this point. And now let me just kind of give you a foundational base of what a habit actually is. A habit is something that you do on a regular basis, unconsciously, and then once you do it enough, it becomes unconscious to you, and so you'll do it without even thinking. And from a functional level, what that means is repetition. So you build, in sports we'll call it muscle memory. When you do the same movement over and over and over, you create muscle memory. Another analogy of this would be like every time that you do an action, it's like creating a neural pathway. So it's like walking down this analogy, like you're walking through tall grass. So it's walking through the trail first, and there's no trail, you're blazing the trail, and that's one neural pathway. Then you do it again, another repetition, you get two neural pathways, and then furthermore that grass starts to split and you start to see the path. You go down there 10 times, 20 times, 30 times, and all of a sudden the neural pathway becomes more lit up. They say that the neurons that wire together fire together. So if you start doing the same thing over and over and over, you're creating the neurons together, they'll start firing together. And as they start firing together, it'll gain strength. And similarly to the path that you're walking through the tall grass, when you do that 20 or 30 times, all of a sudden it starts to become a trail. When you look back, it's a trail and it's easy to find, easy to get down. You know exactly what to do and it just happens naturally. That's how the habits work. So you have to unlearn your bad habits and then simultaneously start doing positive habits. And when you do this, you're effectively reprogramming your mind. So you unprogram, reprogram. And this is done through habits, and it's done on a conscious basis. It has to be done on a conscious basis, or else you won't get the outcome that you're looking for. And then when you're able to create these patterns, these habits, these disciplines, you effectively train the machine, the body, the mind. You train it to do exactly what you want, and you make your success autopilot, where it automatically happens for you. These habits are just easy. That's just what you do, right? And right now, you're just doing based off of the habits that you created. So it's about undoing the bad stuff and creating new habits, and it'll set you down a whole new path. So all of this really started to guide me down this spiritual path. And as I started to learn and educate myself in the spiritual teachings, I was simultaneously going down the scientific pathway and educating myself from that standpoint. And I came across the subject of quantum physics. And what quantum physics has shown is that everything in our world, our reality, is on a foundational level energy. In fact, every molecule is 99.99999% empty. Every molecule. So what I'm telling you is that even these hard desks, these things that we are perceiving to feel as solid, they're actually not there. It's an illusion. There's nothing there. So how is it an illusion? What do you mean? I can feel it. It hurts. If I get hit in the head with a bat, that hurts. It's damn well solid. That's what you're going to tell me. But that's not true. And let me explain how. So if each molecule is 99.99% empty, that means that, how are you perceiving solidness? Well, you're perceiving it. How do we perceive everything? We perceive everything through our senses, our five senses: the sight, our hearing, our temperature, touch, sound, right? So we sense all these different things through our sense organs. And our sense organs, they send, that's right, an electrical impulse through our nerves. We already know this stuff. You probably already know this. It's an electrical impulse. So it takes the input, okay? Takes the input, it goes into our brain, it creates an electrical impulse, so then our brain creates a story, and it'll tell us what it is. How does it tell us what it is? How does it create that story? It does that based off of your previous knowledge, previous information. It says, this is something like, it's similar to, you know this, it's something like that. Or it's the same as, it's a cat, it's a dog, you've seen this before. That's what your brain tells you. It creates the imagery, it creates the illusion for you. It's an illusion. It creates it. It feels hard because that's what your senses are telling you. Okay, that's the illusion. So what I found is that this quantum physics, it started to diverge, and everything comes back to all the same thing. The spiritual teachings, the science teachings, it all comes back to one thing, the one thing. And that just as they teach in the Hermetic teachings, Hermes Trismegistus, who is the Greek god of knowledge and wisdom, they say he lived 350 years in the flesh, and he accumulated all of the knowledge and he passed it on. Just as he says in the first law, the Hermetic laws, that all is mind. All is mind. Everything that exists is in the mind. Okay, and so, like, wow, how is that even possible? Well, because the only perception that you have of what we call reality is an electrical impulse that's being interpreted by your brain. That's the illusion. Okay, and you're like, oh my God, I know it's going to blow. This is going to blow your mind, and some of you may not be ready for this. And so this is what I'm talking about, this enlightening, this path of spiritual awakening. And so when I start to speak on these things, it might be above your head, it might be beyond your understanding, and maybe you've heard this stuff before, and hopefully I can enlighten you a little bit and phrase it in words that spark an idea, so where then you can get further down this path to understand what I'm saying, because hearing the words is not enough. You have to understand it at a soul level. You have to discover these things. These are things that you must discover. I can tell you what they are. I can explain my experience of them, but you must discover them for yourself. Buddhism, one of my favorites. Now, I went down all of the different rabbit holes and paths for different religions, but Buddhism is not a religion. My understanding of Buddhism is a mind technology. And so it utilizes thought processes as a technology to almost like tinker with your brain. It uses meditation to tinker with your brain to get it in the right mind state to allow for the understandings of natural law to occur naturally for you, the awakening process to occur naturally for you. That's Buddhism. So I highly suggest you should be educated on Buddhism. And for me personally, meditation has been a pivotal part of my awakening process. It's becoming more in touch with the stillness, the creation process. That's what meditation opens up the mind and shows you the answers to all your questions and allows you to lift the veil and the fog that might be causing your inability to see the truth. I've also ventured down the shamanic path over the years and explored teachings of the indigenous people. I spent time in Peru with the shamans. I also spent time in Mexico with the shamans and went through shamanic ceremonial initiations. And these are initiations into mindsets and belief structures. And the shamanic path is it's an individualized path where you are pointed in the direction, much like I'm going to be pointing you in the direction with this. I will do some of the ideas that I'm pointing in the direction are based off of the shamanic path. And again, a lot of this stuff I will go deeper into in the future. I was also had a much exposure to hypnosis, self-hypnosis, past life regression, particularly through Dolores Cannon, who is she's now passed. I've taken her master's course in past life regression, and if you have not read her books, it will blow your frickin' mind what she was exposed to and how she was able to tap into the fourth dimension, the universal intelligence, and she did this through the minds of others. Unbelievable what she was capable of doing. But this will allow you to see the potential of the mind and what is possible, not only for what she was able to do, but what your mind is capable of doing. See, what I realize is that we will never be able to accomplish anything that we are not aware is possible. So as soon as you hear me say these things, you are now aware and conscious that it is possible for you. Therefore, you're able to start moving in that direction and start expanding your own awareness and consciousness. Dolores was able to figure out ways through past life regression to allow each individual to regress back to past lives. So access your soul at a soul level and experience or get the information from past lives that you may have lived. And whether you believe this stuff or not is largely irrelevant, because it provides you with information that helps guide you along this path and helps you takes your mind to a whole different level. And that's really all that matters. And so through the quantum physics, I found that all roads, quantum physics, the science nature, the religious, the spiritual side, all roads lead to the same thing, and that's God. And at the time, I was the type of person, I was rebelling against religion. I grew up in a Methodist household, and I was like, as soon as I was out of the house, I'm like, I'm done with going to church. That's bullshit. They've been trying to program me, and I saw the bullshit right from the beginning, and I rebelled. And part of my rebellion was I believed that for a time in my life that I was an atheist, that I didn't believe in God, and God was the problem. As it turns out, that's not the case. And let me explain. My understanding of the word God was that religion described him as a being, a human, in human form. But in my learnings, my seeking, I find he's described in a different way, and he is a he, she, because there is no specific gender to God. Rather, God, another word for God would be universal intelligence, or the divine being, or as the Hermetics describe it, the all, meaning he is all pervasive. God is the substance that we are made of. So when we say that the atoms are 99.999% empty, that emptiness that we are saying is emptiness, that's spirit. That's what God is. And so when you start to understand that emptiness that we believe is emptiness, that's where the intelligence is. That's where the free will starts. That's where the creation begins, in the emptiness, in the darkness. It begins from nothing. That's what God is. So I became a devotee, and I became committed to finding God and serving the highest good of all. And so it changed my philosophy in that, perhaps when I was younger, I had this belief that it was search of the physical nature, that we're trying to, create great wealth for myself, and I had a selfish means of living. And so this changed my selfish ways of living to, once I realized that we are all made of this all-pervasive divine spirit, this God, we are all made of the same thing, then anytime I tried to harm someone else, I was effectively harming myself. Therefore, all things that I do are now in the benefit of all, because the benefit of all is the benefit of me. And so I realized that I am the one. And to me, what that meant was this spirit within me is the base, foundational, the unlimited aspect of my life, of my entity, my being, who I am. And that energy, it flows through me. And I am the free will, almost like the conductor of this energy. And I tell my body, my mind, what to do with the energy. And so it goes from unlimited to limited. And I limit to my belief of who I am. And I take that I am is the word that conducts the energy. And whatever comes after those words is what I become. And so when I say I am angry, I become angry. When I say I am happy, I become happy. When you say I am not good enough, you are not good enough to yourself, because that's what you believe. So this is a path at this point where I started to realize who I actually am, and that I am the one that creates my reality. God is this substance that permeates every atom of my body. And quantum physics, science, has proven this to be true. So those of you who are like, I don't believe in God. Okay, what do you believe in? Because if you believe in science, you believe in God. It's been proven. When I say it's been proven, read the books. The language is almost exactly the same when you get to the quantum physics. It's almost exactly the same as it is from the religious standpoint, from the spiritual standpoint, from the yogic standpoint, from the Eastern philosophies, from the Chinese, Chinese medicine philosophies. All of this stuff, they speak the same language when it gets down to that foundational level, when they get to what it is that we were made of. We are effectively, let me use this analogy, like we are a wave or a ripple on the ocean of spirit. So this insinuates the oneness in that we perceive ourselves to be separate, as the wave is separate than the ocean, but we see the waves, and then when it crashes on the shore, it reverts right back to the ocean and becomes the ocean. And so we are the same. In our human life, we are like a wave, a ripple on this ocean of God, this ocean of being, and that when our wave crashes and ends, we recede and go right back to this all-pervasive substance that permeates everything. Another analogy here to kind of give you an imaginary idea of what's happening here and how we are in this individualized state and belief, but when in reality we're all one. So God is like having gas go through a pipe, and the pipe directed to one flame will elicit that one flame only. That same gas can then be redirected, and multiple holes will elicit multiple flames. And so this is synonymous with what is happening with the humans, where the spirit is coming through the human body, and it's expressing itself through each one of us individually. And we, through our minds, create this illusion, which is just an idea. It's just an idea that we're separate. And so once you are able to transcend that idea, that's where the awakening and self-realization occurs. I found that the body is essentially a pass-through or an antenna to where this energy, this God energy, I like to call it, this God energy, I tune in with it through my body as an antenna, and I take that energy and I'm able to utilize that energy to manifest my reality, manifest within this 3D world. And so in order to tune into that God energy, there's certain things you can do. And that's what I found over these years with the 8 years of biohacking. I figured these things out, and I figured out the habits and the specific things that you can do in order to hack the body, in order to raise and elevate your frequency to be in tune with peace and love and joy and all that God represents. As this energy flows through you, you can manifest that energy on the lower frequencies and experience the hate, disgust, and anger and pain and fear, or you can elevate yourself and tune into the higher frequencies and experience joy, love, and happiness all the time throughout your life, because you are unlimited potential. So when you limit your situation, do it on purpose and limit to where you're only experiencing the joy, the happiness, and good parts of life. See, my mission is to serve as the way shower, meaning the person that's showing you the way shower, and guide you on your personal transformation, on your path to realizing your full potential and becoming your best version. That is the goal of biohacking. That is why I started The Way. That's why we offer these services, to awaken the mind, awaken the soul, to cleanse out the toxins within your body, to allow you to elevate and raise your vibrations to experience this God consciousness. That's the purpose. That's why we biohack. That's why we're here. And if you want more, make sure you watch all the other episodes and follow Becoming Superhuman Podcast. Gandhi said,
Be the change you wish to see in the world. You must choose to become superhuman. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Becoming Superhuman podcast. I'm your host, Trevor Schmidt. Be sure to follow our social media channels. We'll see you next time.